I'm Jessica, and this is Nick.
Hey, and we're on Pazuzu. Pazuzu is a 1998 Sabre 402. It's 40 feet long, about 13 feet wide, and we've lived aboard for about
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
So, do you want to explain the reason why we decided to convert our boat to electric?
Yeah. The engine that was on the boat had some issues, and it needed a lot of work done to it. And I decided that with how little we really use the diesel, that we'd be better off with an electric motor. It's our use case. It really works well for us. It works perfect so far.
Yeah, I think, since we are the kind of sailors who, basically get out of the slip and can put up the sails as soon as possible and turn off that terrible loud motor, knowing that, we just really needed it to get out of the slip. And if it's light wind, we wanted to be able to run the motor and not hear it, which is really nice. I think any sailor who's ever been on a sailboat and you're motoring from place to place, as soon as that motor goes off and it's absolutely silent, I think you just feel the stress go away that you didn't know was there. So that's been wonderful. So I think the project ended up being a little bit more difficult than we planned. What would you say were the biggest technical challenges that we faced while doing the conversion?
So they don't make boxes for these batteries. They don't make shells that hold them. They don't make mounts for the equipment that's in there. So all that stuff we had to fabricate on our own, and with a lot of trial and error, a lot of making templates.
Yeah, a lot of cardboard templates.
Construction paper templates, then a cardboard template, then finally a plywood template, and then the real shelf.
And sometimes the templates weren't quite right either. There was definitely a lot of going back and forth and reconfiguring things. And there was more than one occasion where we had planned how we wanted everything laid out, and when we went to go install it, we realized it didn't fit. So that was definitely a big challenge. Also, it was just a giant learning curve for us. We wanted to do the installation as much ourselves as we could so that we understood the system, how things worked. If something needed to be, troubleshooted while we were out cruising, we would know where everything was and what we did. But yeah, it was a huge learning curve, but I think it was incredibly satisfying for us to finish it and have it work perfectly. So how did we determine what components or equipment were right for the conversion?
So we talked to a couple different companies that make electric motors and ended up going with Electric Yacht. They set us up with a 20 kilowatt motor based on the size of the boat and the weight. And then they had a recommended battery capacity. And then I used a local dealer for Victron for all the batteries and the management equipment. And he helped me out with a wiring diagram.
And I think both of those companies were really helpful for us. The part of the reason we decided to go with the motor that we went with was that company was really geared toward sailing and people who wanted to do it themselves as far as the installation went. We had reached out to another company, and they were definitely more the traditional, we'll come and install it, we'll do it all for you. And as soon as we said that we were interested in doing it ourselves, they didn't have much interest in us. So having a local place here and then the company that we bought the motor from, who were both incredibly helpful in answering our questions and sending diagrams, I think that was hugely impactful on how we designed the system and the components that we decided to go with. What type of batteries and charging system did we decide to go with?
So we went with lithium iron phosphate. It's commonly pronounced LiFePO4. And we used Victron. They are 24 volt, 200 amp hour batteries. We have 4 of them, giving us 400 amp hours at 48 volt. This gets us 25 miles at 4 or 5 knots. There's a steep decrease in range the faster you run the motor. And it works the other way too. We could go for 100 miles if we only wanted to go and not use any diesel. The charger is also Victron. And it also handles the shore power coming into the boat, and then if we want to run regular 120 volt appliances while we're at anchor, it also can use the battery bank to power those devices.
And I think ultimately it'll let us add solar to it, right?
Yeah, eventually we'll have a generator and solar as multiple methods of making electricity. So our max speed is, well, we haven't really done a full max speed test, but
I think we
can still get hull speed.
Yeah,
it's 7.8 knots, I think.
But not for very long.
Right. So I think at that speed we have about 45 minutes of battery. If we cut that in half, we end up with 5 hours of battery.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I think we figured out if we really needed to take the boat up to Baltimore from Annapolis, and it was a totally windless day, about 3.5 knots.
Yeah.
We could go from here to Baltimore without much problem.
Still be a day trip. It's one way. You get there one day and then come back the next day.
Right.
But we could do that, plug in while we're there, and then come back. How's the conversion affected our sailing?
Well, I think the big thing is, there's no more loud motor to listen to. Like I said earlier, I think, we always try to turn off the motor as quickly as possible. So, we're really true sailors, and we'll pick where we want to go based on what the wind's doing. We were able to take a short cruise over New Year's. Mm-hmm. And do you want to tell them a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we had the bottom cleaned a couple weeks before that, and the forecast was for really light wind, and we've got less range than we do with the diesel, but we just plan a little differently. Mm-hmm. So we just know that if we go somewhere, we have to know that the weather will allow us to sail back, or sail there and motor back, or motor there and sail back.
But, another thing that we have the ability of doing is, as many Chesapeake Bay sailors know, the middle of the summer, when it's the nicest weather outside, doesn't always mean it's the best wind. And a lot of people like to motor sail. You get the sails up, but you still got that engine chugging along. So something that we can do is we can run the electric motor on a very low power, and it's just enough to give us a little bit of apparent wind, so we can really sail with very little interference from the motor itself. So I think if there's any wisdom that we could provide after doing this entire project, which took us just about a year to do by ourselves, I think one really huge thing is, if you're doing it yourself, you have to be comfortable with fabricating your own things, really being self-sufficient as far as planning, mounting, being comfortable with using your tools. What else?
So you also need to think about how you use your boat. If you tend to motor all day for days at a time, it's probably not the right choice. Mm-hmm. But if you motor out of your slip and put the sails up, it's great. This diesel engine doesn't love to run for a really short time and never get warmed up all the way.
Yeah.
The electric motor doesn't care.
No, and I think, for most sailors that live in Annapolis, since we're so close to the bay and really nice sailing, I think for most people, if they were thinking about changing out their motor, whether it was just time to do it or they're looking to do an upgrade, I think an electric motor is a pretty good option for most people down here. If you're like us and you do just leave your slip and try to get the sails up as quickly as possible, then, for us at least, it seems like it's definitely the way to go.